1, 2, 3, 4.
There are times I wonder if I'm really alone. There are times I wonder if I'm true. There are times when I feel alone and I'm full roam. There are times I feel alone with you. You are enough of you. And there's always a love for you.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm real or if I'm seen.
I see everything, you are enough for me. You are enough for you.
So my name is Alexandria Rose, but I go by Alec.
My name is Maverick Heminger.
My name is Jai.
My name is Tony.
My name is Fee.
Nicholas Scott is my full name.
My pronouns are they, them, their.
My pronouns are he, him, his.
I use they, them for my pronouns.
I use he, him pronouns.
My pronouns are he, him.
My pronouns are he, him, his, sir, mister.
I identify mostly as trans non-binary. I have been looking more into identifying as gender fluid, but right now I'm pretty comfortable with the term trans non-binary. That seems to cover me.
My gender identity is trans male.
My gender identity is non-binary, androgynous, like gender non-conforming. I like the ambiguity of that, yeah.
I identify as a trans male.
I identify as male.
To the outside world that meets me, my gender identity is he and male, is what I present. But to those that know me in my inner life, I'm actually the, maybe you look at an application and you see the M and you see the slash, you see the F. I'm that slash in between the two of them.
I identify as panromantic asexual.
My sexual orientation is shifty. I don't really know. I'd say the closest is pansexual.
I identify as queer, pansexual, gay.
I identify as queer.
I am homosexual.
I identify as queer as my sexual orientation because I'm not a lesbian because I'm not a female, so I identify as queer because I'm neither.
I feel like my gender and my sexual orientation intersect kind of in the way that pan means all, and being like trans non-binary, it's kind of none and all at the same time. So I feel like they intersect in the way that, in the same way that I take on no and all genders, and I'm willing to be fluid with that. Also, who I'm attracted to. People can be trans non-binary, they can be trans whatever, they can be cisgender. Who I'm romantically attracted to has nothing to do with their gender. And also at the same time, there's the none aspect, as an asexual not being sexually attracted to any people. So the all and the none, they all just come together.
Before my transition, like I identified as a lesbian. After going through my transition, like I became comfortable in my body and I just became more attracted to men, I guess, as well. Like there's something about it that just like opened up after transitioning.
You know, being raised female, people often assume that I'm just like butch or like lesbian, and I just don't identify with that at all. And I think that coincides with my gender identity and how I express my gender identity, and those go hand in hand with, you know, all the other aspects of sexuality and orientation.
I would say my gender and my sexual orientation do intersect, yeah. Before I identified as trans, I identified as lesbian, and I think that my gender identity broadened my interpretation of my sexual orientation into being more fluid, and I'm still figuring it out, and that was something that came with my transition.
Well, as a man, I seek out men for sexual relationships, and I think it's tied in so much with my race and my ethnicity or my parent body that they expect me to be a certain way, and it's really difficult to explain to someone like, oh, all of your assumptions of me are wrong. As a Vietnamese man, I think I'm seen by white culture as more feminine, and I get called feminine pronouns all the time. And ever since I was a kid, even, like, they would use derogatory feminine adjectives to describe me, and I think that's how they intersect. It's really interesting to sit on this line of like feeling like a boy but being called a girl all the time as like I don't know why they do it. It's really interesting.
I do feel like my gender orientation and my sexuality intersect just because whenever it comes, I don't see gender in other people, and I don't love people because of their gender, but they also can't love me because of my gender because I don't exactly have one that fits in the box. And so they have to intersect.
As an asexual, I would say that nothing really affects my romantic relationships because I don't really have romantic relationships. I'm also an introvert and I spend a lot of time just with me, and so maybe my gender intersects with that in a way that being trans can sometimes be isolating, and some other identities that I have can be isolating, but I would say no, they don't really intersect because there's nothing that I intersect with really.
I feel like during my transition I kind of lost a lot of my sexual needs, I guess. Like, so I became more of like asexual, but I was still very like romantic.
I usually, try to find people that can relate to things that I'm going through. So if obviously folks in like the queer community I'm attracted to, and so I look for people that I identify with in some ways. I think in my like romantic relationships, it's conversation. We have these conversations about where we are with our gender identity, where like how we're feeling, and I think that is really helpful to process with someone else that is also going through something like that. Processing what it's like to not live within a binary, not conform to like certain social standards that have been placed on us. And I think when you add that into like a romantic partnership, it creates like a lot of different capacity for things to grow and manifest.
One of the most significant relationships in my life, I started dating the person when I was more in the closet, not out as trans yet, and she was aware that I was trans because I had told her when we first were friends. But she was kind of discovering her own sexual orientation and presentation and comfortability with a lot of different things, and in that way my transness like affected how public we were, and we aren't together anymore, but I think that affected a lot of things going on in my life, I guess. My figuring out how to come out and be trans when I was with somebody who was still figuring out how comfortable they felt, that definitely affected my feelings of comfortability with myself.
In the gay community, there's so much like, are you a top? Are you a bottom? Do you take it? Like that kind of thing. So it's just really funny to have that be like the very first question when you're dating someone. Like that doesn't happen in a straight relationship, for instance. Like you don't go up to someone and be like, hey, are you a top for sure? So it's really interesting to get to the step of a first date. It's like you have to already fill in all these gaps that I would think in a straight relationship you don't really even need to address.
I just recently had surgery, and so on my chest, and so previously it was very hard because I'm attracted to beautiful women, and they were attracted to me, and they would see the man that I am. Well, then when I would take my clothes off, I'm not fully male, and I want to be respected as both, for the gender that I am, not just as a male. I don't want you to treat me just as a male. I don't want you to treat me as a female. And so I've had to have partners that understood that and could see that and still love me as such.